Welcome to the Exceptional Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Anita Brooks, and here you'll find teaching topics, interviews, conversations, and coaching tips, all designed to help you level up. We all lead someone. The question is, are we leading well, exceptionally well? So join me on a quest, not for perfection, but absolutely for exceptional leadership. Welcome back, Exceptional Leader. Today, I want to talk to you about something that I call the Joseph factor. But before I delve too much into that, I also want to share with you something that answers a question I've received from a few people in the last few weeks. And so that question is, what kind of businesses do you do coaching for? Really great question. And so I'm just going to answer that here, and hopefully this covers a lot of folks. So I actually have 3 industries that are major emphasis for me. And I'll tell you what those are. I'm going to tell you why that is in just a moment. But first, I do want to say that even though I have those 3 areas of emphasis, now what is happening and has been happening for a few years is I've moved across other industries. So what I find is the practicals that I teach, the exercises, the activities that unearth and unlayer so much meaty information that leads to happier people in the workplace, better processes, greater performance, which all leads to higher net profitability. This does translate across industries. So the work that I do, it is something that even though I have this emphasis in the 3 areas, I'm now working with manufacturing, construction. I've done some retail, like restaurant type of businesses. So I just want you to know that whatever business you're working in, the things that I teach here really will just run the gamut. And so you can apply those. But for me, I just have a deep passion as well as that's married to life experience that's brought me to these 3 specific industries that I focus on the most. The first one is the healthcare field. So there's a few reasons that I'm really passionate about that industry. One is well over 25 years ago, I was a patient. So I donated my kidney in 1997. And through that experience, I learned a lot about the healthcare industry as a patient. I became a patient advocate. But it also led me into a realm of training and teaching surgeons and nurses and transplant teams and hospital administrators. I've spoken at several hospitals now, spoken at conferences, been brought in for intensive trainings, even for some leadership retreats in the medical field. That's just something that I am extremely passionate about because I've been that patient that needed good health care. And frankly, I've experienced the really good medical personnel that you could tell they were well trained. They had the right heart and attitude for what they did. And then I've had those who didn't seem to care quite as much. And for me, I've had a couple of very serious medical situations in my life. And I can tell you when I'm laying in a bed and I'm helpless, I want that person who is trained. I want that person who has confidence about what they're doing. I want that person who is not burned out, bitter, resentful, and just like grumbling and griping about the job they have to do. I want someone who's passionate about helping people, but they're not going to feel that way unless they believe that their leadership is pouring into them, unless they feel encouraged and supported. And so I love being able to bring that type of training to the table for that industry, but also inspire and motivate energy because those are hard jobs. They're really tough. And I'll tell you what, if you're listening to this podcast and you are not in the healthcare industry or you are not working in some form of emergency services, Take a moment and think about those folks. Just think about what they do and how much they serve and how much they pour themselves into others. So for the rest of us, if we can help refill their cups a little bit, if we can encourage them and build their confidence and give them some education along the way, that's a very meaningful thing to do. So I'm so blessed I get to work with those folks. Well, my second industry group that I focus on is finance and banking. Well, the reason for that is because in my younger life, starting in my very early 20s, I worked in banking for about 8.5 years, and I loved it. In that position, I was able to help a lot of folks financially. So where the medical field is physical health, I think about banking as financial health and being able to help grow the financial help for other people. When I worked in that world, it was so amazing to be able, and I did things that I guess a lot of maybe today's typical banker wouldn't do, but like I would teach people how to create budgets and follow them. And I would teach them how to, best set up their payment plans and so forth. And I absolutely just embraced, I guess, being able to see people like enrich their lives. And I don't just mean monetarily. I mean, enrich their lives where they didn't feel so stressed and worried about money. And they were able to save for their future or have an emergency fund or get that first house or build that first house or get that nice car that they wouldn't have been able to do otherwise without some of those financial building blocks that I was able to help teach many, many folks. And so that was just a thrill of my life. Well, fast forward to today, and I'm actually a board member of a bank. And so it's a different view. It's a different perspective. At the board level, we're kind of at the 30,000 foot view, right? We're not involved in the day-to-day operations, but we're the oversight folks. And so it's a whole different and almost deeper level of being able to invest in your community, invest yourself in being a part of that greater good of helping businesses and economies grow and strengthen and sustain themselves. And I love getting to do that work. And the bank that I'm on the board of is a small community bank. So there's only a handful of branches, but I'm telling you, the whole team, everybody's just so passionate that we want to make the communities that we live in a better place to live. We want our neighbors to have better lives. What a neat thing to be a part of that. But in addition, then I have the blessing of sometimes being able to speak at financial conferences or retreats and things of that nature. And of course, I do business coaching in that world as well. And it's just wonderful to be able to know that many lives are being touched just by that work that you get to do. Well, then my third industry, and I'm telling you, when I tell you that, you're going to probably think that is a really strange trifecta. But hopefully you're going to see how I connect these dots. But my third industry is the resort kind of hospitality world, if you will. So I worked in actually one of the larger river resorts in the country for about 20 years. And I loved it. It was hard, grueling work at times. Now, there were days I didn't love the work, but I'll tell you, I love the impact. I loved the many, what I call God moments that took place while I was there. And it was a blessing to be able to help that business grow and to see so many people in the community have jobs because of the work that we were able to create and produce. Not to mention the customers that we got to interact with. And a lot of the building blocks of my life and what I do today came from what I did in the banking world and then this world in resort, because there's just something about that feast or famine kind of industry where you only have about 4 months to make your income while you got to pay bills for 12 months. Let me tell you, that will sharpen your business skills. And I think, frankly, our government could learn a few things from that industry. But I passionately am so grateful that I was able to work there. So that one, though, where the medical field, emergency services, that's physical health. Then there's the financial health aspect from banking and finance world. But what I see from the resort hospitality industry is this has an impact on our emotional, mental, and relational health. Most of the businesses that I've worked with, I have worked with a few hotel businesses as well. So that's a little bit different. It's still hospitality, but it's different from the typical resort that I love to work with, which many of them, they have like outdoor recreation opportunities and amenities. And so I love seeing the families outdoors, breathing fresh airs, not with their necks craned down, which frankly is probably going to cause neck and shoulder issues from all that time spent on that. But their neck isn't craned down looking at their phone or their tablet or their computer, but they're actually looking at each other in the eyes. Sometimes you see them laughing and, heads thrown back and, you see the, parents out there playing ball with the kids and the kids running and playing tag and things like that. And they're breathing that fresh air. They're getting that sunshine and they're spending moments with each other that frankly, some of those moments can become magic because when those kids grow up, those are the things that they're going to remember. Time spent with dad and mom, time spent with siblings. And those are the type of things that can give them a foundation of confidence that helps them go into the world and be more successful as a human being. And so I just love knowing that mental and emotional health can be restored, it can be healed, and it can be sustained just by people being able to get away in places like this. So going in and doing trainings that teach leadership and good management skills, that teach good fiscal planning and researching and comparing that can help you make good financial decisions for a business. Doing the employee training, being able to teach frontline folks how to do their jobs better, but how to embrace it more and how to enjoy it more, how to gain that sense of satisfaction from a job well done. Of course I have the practical and tactical that I teach, but I also bring the heart and soul into my coaching and training work. And so I love being able to build that in and frankly, then seeing employee engagement raise and morale boost and all of that energy, that good positive energy that employers want to see. Many times we're able to help create that in those cultures. And boy, is that fun. But for me, I guess the thing I'll say that I get from all of that is I feel like the work that I do in this trifecta of businesses, it does make the world a better place. I am making a meaningful difference. Yes, I'm helping improve the bottom lines of these businesses, but by doing that, that is also improving the lives of the people who work for them. And those businesses themselves, many times the services that they offer, or in some cases, like I said, I have manufacturing clients, a couple of those, the products they produce, they make our lives better. It improves our lives. It makes us healthier and happier. Well, you know what? I get to be a part of making all of that or raising that, I guess, to a higher level. So that just is one of the joys of my life. But I want to talk about the Joseph factor. I want to go back to that because the Joseph factor is something that I bring into everything that I do. And I've been doing this for years now. So way back when I was a young thing, that young lady working in the banking industry and was so green, even then I brought the Joseph factor philosophy with me. In my years working in the sometimes tough and the sometimes amazing world of resort management, I brought the Joseph factor into that. When I go out and I teach and I train, whether it's surgeons, surgical nurses, hospital administrators, bankers, or, resort owners or managers or frontline employees, whomever it is, I bring the Joseph factor with me. So what is the Joseph factor? Well, years ago, I wrote a book called First Hired, Last Fired, How to Become Irreplaceable in Any Job Market. And the premise for that book was, I've heard this so many times, I know you have too, where someone will say, well, anyone can be replaced. And frankly, I've said it. But it started occurring to me that that may not actually be true. And I began to question that. So is it true that anyone can be replaced? And so as I pondered that and I began to consider whether that was fact or just a fiction that we tell ourselves, I began to realize that even though you can put another warm body into a position, there are some people who work with such integrity and honesty. They have such experience and expertise that even if they left and you put somebody else in that position, things would never be quite the same. The job wouldn't be done quite to the same level of quality. It would probably take longer. There would probably, and I see this quite frequently, there are segments of knowledge that are completely lost when someone leaves because the new people don't know. And most of the time, especially at a high level position, 2 weeks notice is not very long to train someone when you have years, maybe decades worth of experience. And so I believe that there are many people who are what I call a Joseph type of a person. See, where I get that from, so I'm a woman of faith and I read the Bible. Now, whether you agree with the Bible or not, I'm not going to debate that, but I'm going to tell you I find a lot of relevancy in reading the Bible and applying that to my life today. I believe it's one of the secret sauces of what I do. And so I do look for relevancy. And there's a man in the book of Genesis, which is the first book of the Bible, and his name was Joseph. Now, when you first hear about Joseph, he is a very young man, and he comes to his brothers, and then he goes to his father, and he tells this story about how he has this dream. And in this dream, essentially, it's like they're bowing down to him. Well, as you can imagine, that ticked them off. And so the brothers, in their jealousy, they ended up doing something that, to me, it's inconceivable, but it was a different place and time. And they first contemplated killing Joseph. So they thought about killing their own brother over this jealousy. But what they did instead, the oldest brother convinced them to sell him into slavery. And so Joseph, unfairly, by the way, so mind you, the only thing this young boy did was he had a dream and he shared what the dream was. Because of that, he was unfairly sold into slavery and he was carried off to a foreign land. And they spoke a foreign language. So he's put into the service of, I guess, the equivalent of what we would call a governor. But Joseph, obviously, from what we read in the context of this narrative, and by the way, there's a lot of archaeology that supports that Joseph was not a fictional character. He was a living human being historically. So anyway, Joseph, though, carried himself with integrity, Obviously, he was very trusted by his master. You can see where over time that trust grew, but you can also see how the master prospered from Joseph, from what he did. He, as the Bible would put it, he worked as unto the Lord. And so that meant he worked as if he were working for God himself. Regardless of whether he thought things were fair, he still served with integrity. And as a result of that, there were blessings that Joseph received. But then, wouldn't you know it, something else unfair happened to Joseph. He was wrongfully accused of something he did not do. So this governor's wife accuses him of sexually assaulting her, when in fact she had tried to seduce him, and he turned her down because, get this, it wouldn't have been the right thing to do. So what does she do? She turns the tables and she accuses him, and so he gets thrown into prison. Now, poor Joseph, here he's already been sold into slavery. He's in this foreign land. He's every day trying to act with integrity no matter what's happened. He doesn't justify improper behavior. And for his trouble, he gets thrown into prison, and he's there for 12 years. 12 years. Now, you might think Joseph became bitter, resentful. Maybe he did start justifying, but he didn't do any of that. Joseph continued to carry himself with dignity. You know, when I think of dignity, I relate that to professionalism. I think very professional people carry themselves with maturity and dignity. It's something I deeply respect. And it's something that I want to make sure that we don't lose in this world. There's a lot to be said for accomplishing great things when you carry yourself with maturity and dignity, no matter what other people do, no matter how unfairly you may be accused of something, no matter whether someone else tries to undermine or undercut you, whether they act with integrity or not, you do. You just don't stoop to those levels. You conduct yourself with dignity. And that was Joseph. Well, as Joseph languished in prison, so there was a pretty interesting, fascinating thing where the Pharaoh, so he was in Egypt. Pharaoh has some dreams and no one can interpret them. But Joseph had a God-given talent where he was able to interpret dreams. And as a result, I won't go into all the detail. You can go to Genesis and read the story for yourself. It really is a fascinating read, especially when you consider how some of that might be relevant to you and to our times that we live in today. But Joseph was called before Pharaoh. He successfully interpreted the dream. And as a result of that, Pharaoh elevated this slave into the next highest position under him. No one in the nation of Egypt had a higher position, except for Pharaoh, than Joseph. The country goes into a famine, but before that, they had 7 years of prosperity. Joseph was wise. This is something as leaders we all should take into consideration. Joseph saved and he put back. And so when the years of famine and lack came, they were prepared. They had food. They had enough, not only to feed themselves, but then people from other nations began to come and they began to buy and barter food. And so the nation of Egypt became even wealthier and stronger. And at the very end of this amazing story, Joseph's brothers come to Egypt to buy food because where they live, people are starving. They didn't recognize Joseph, though, because he was dressed in the Egyptian garb and the Egyptian makeup of a very high leader. So it was somewhat of a disguise. Plus, he was more mature. Many years had passed since they'd seen their brother. And Joseph, at first, didn't tell them who he was. But when he finally revealed himself, his brothers were scared, and I would say rightfully so. They knew what they had done wrong. They felt guilty, and they feared repercussion from Joseph. But what I think is so amazing is Joseph did not pay them back as he could have. He certainly had the power to do so. Some would say he was justified, very justified in doing so. But he chose the path of forgiveness instead. And he chose to take the high road. He chose to carry himself with dignity. And because of that, the relationships were salvaged. So what does all of this have to do with leadership? Well, the biggest reason that I enact the Joseph factor, I think that there are some principles that any of us can learn that can help us not only become better leaders, but better servants, if you will. And I know a lot of people don't like that terminology, but we do serve each other. And if we serve each other with an open, willing heart, I believe that there are rewards that come from that. I don't think we should ever try to manipulate or have an ulterior motives, but I think that even if there are some who take advantage of us, you know, what goes around does come around. And I just believe God will take care of us and we will be blessed. So the Joseph factor is simply this. It is carrying yourself with professionalism, with maturity, with dignity, no matter what other people say or do to you. The Joseph factor is praying for the people that you work for and that you serve. Because I believe that through us, the businesses, the organizations that we work in, they can grow, they can become enriched, they can be blessed because not only of the work of our hands, but because of the heart and the attitude that we carry in how we go about the things that we do. Another thing about Joseph was that he had integrity. He did the same thing whether anyone else could see or hear him or not. You know, when that governor's wife came to him, he very easily could have been tempted. And no one else was around at the time. So he might have gotten away with it. But he did not excuse himself. He did not justify. He acted the same way as if anyone else was there or not. Something else I really admire about Joseph is he worked as if he were working unto the Lord. And you know, that is something I do try to bring into every coaching scope I do. Whether my clients know it or not, I pray for them. I pray for guidance. I pray for their businesses to flourish and profit. I pray for wisdom so that I don't say anything that would create harm, only things that would help and heal. And I think by working that way and having that attitude, I mean, it helps you just do things I just don't know that you're capable of on your own. At least that's my belief. And finally, with the Joseph factor, I think about something that the book of Genesis tells us at the end of Joseph's story. It says that because of Joseph, many lives were saved. And I think that is applicable to our 21st century roles and responsibilities. You know, we may not save someone physically. Now, granted, if you work in emergency services or the medical field, whole different ballgame. But for many of us, we're not necessarily going to physically save lives. But you know what? None of us knows what other people are carrying, what kind of burdens or past traumas they might have in their lives. And so, as a leader, if you show empathy and compassion and gratitude and appreciation, and you encourage and support people, that by itself can be transformative for some. Because see, many people, they didn't get that when they were growing up. They didn't get that in their home lives. They didn't get that in the school systems. Many people grew up being pushed around and feeling bullied and so forth. But, and maybe you were too. But the thing is, just because somebody else bullied you doesn't mean you use that as justification to push on the next person. Carry yourself with dignity. And when you do that and you treat people well, you don't know what a difference you may have made in that person's life, how you may have maybe transformed their thinking. And today, when mental health is such an issue, it's a pervasive issue, not just in America, but globally. I think all of us could use some more encouragement and empathy. Doesn't mean that we don't hold our people accountable. Doesn't mean that we don't do our job. Doesn't mean that there aren't times that we need to be firm. Those things are all true. But it's not true that we need to do that every minute of every day that we're on the job. So think about that. Maybe through you, many lives could be saved. I think about this too. In leadership, when we allow our people and encourage our people to use their creativity, their unique and special skills and gifts and abilities, sometimes they come up with ideas, projects, processes no one else ever thought of, because the environment is conducive to that. And I have seen with some of my coaching clients, I have seen this, where that type of environment, it is cultured. And so the more people feel free to contribute, the more they do. And there have even been some really cool life-saving things that have happened because leaders, they created that kind of atmosphere for their folks. So I just want you to think about some of these. I know for you, you might be like, well, what does the Joseph factor have to do with saving and making money? It has everything to do with it. Because how we conduct ourselves impacts our decision making. It impacts our actions and our behaviors. But as leaders, it also influences those that we lead. And so the more that people feel cared for, and I know for some of you that's going to feel a little warm, fuzzy, woo-woo, but it's the truth. The more people feel cared for, the more they feel appreciated, the more they feel gratitude from you, the more willing they are to do more, the more excited they are. They want to please a leader. And the more that we do that, the more we see processes improve, performance increases, productivity rises, and net profits grow. So, leader for you, I just challenge you, and I ask that you challenge yourself. Am I living in alignment with the Joseph factor? How could I greater be a Joseph to the organization that I work in and that I serve, to the people that I lead? Because when you take up that challenge, I know this from experience, I know this from long-term experience, not only do you see greater results, but you enjoy deeper satisfaction. No matter what anybody else does to me, I can't change them. I can only work on me. I can only work on my mindset. But when I carry myself like a Joseph, at the end of the day, I can lay my head on my pillow and I can feel peace. Until next time, stay intentional, be exceptional. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Exceptional Leadership Podcast. There's magic in meeting with an objective, and I always have an objective for you. Not only in these episodes, but also from the other resources I offer on my website, anitabrooks.com. That's ANITABROOKS.com. There you'll find information on digital courses, webinars, books, workbooks, of course, my in-person P4 power coaching for businesses and organizations. And if you need a speaker for your conference or your strategic retreat, I'm your gal. But I'm also excited to let you know about a new service that we're offering. For less than half the price of a daily Starbucks latte for a month, you can join our P4 Power Coaching community. This is a monthly membership where you'll get insider tips. And you'll also be able to join our monthly Zoom meetings that are one part strategy sessions, one part mastermind, one part networking, one part coaching. I can promise you'll not only learn from me, but you'll learn from others in the group. We'll also have monthly webinars as part of the P4 Power Coaching community, and we'll have coaching resources and exercises. And you'll get first opportunities and special offers for many of the other things that we have to offer. And of course, you will get leadership encouragements. The P4 Power Coaching community is all about growth, success, and celebrating our wins. And remember, it's never too late for a fresh start with fresh faith. So embrace your exceptional leadership impact with fresh resolve to make the difference you were made for.